And we're back, and we just finished watching Robert Mulligan's 1962 version of To Kill a Mockingbird, based on Harper Lee's novel that was published in July of 1960, also a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and one of the few books that I actually thanked a teacher for forcing me to read. It is the story of Jean Louise and Jeremy Finch, otherwise known as Scout and Jem, and they're growing up in Depression-era South.
They were in Alabama.
In Alabama, right.
Alabama.
And it spans the course of, I think, a few summers, right? Because first Dill came, and then he left, and then Dill came again, and he left.
Yeah, a couple of summers.
And
I hated Dill.
why did you hate Dill?
Who's Dill?
Dill was the
He
friend.
was the little boy that
So
they met.
obnoxious.
In the beginning, they wanted to investigate Boo, and he dared Jem to touch the house.
Yeah, come on. That guy, I hated that kid.
He didn't
he's a
bother
little
me.
kid.
He was a little kid. He didn't have
Little
a dad.
kids do annoying things.
He was always talking about his dad's a pilot or his dad's this.
The train guy.
Yeah.
He was so rich.
His dad
He
basically
definitely
abandoned them.
Exactly. He was living a fantasy life, but
He was still so obnoxious.
I've seen more obnoxious kids.
agreed.
Yeah,
Olivia.
So, what did you think of the movie, Jean?
I thought it was really good.
What was your favorite part?
Well, you're the one who picked it, so why shouldn't we ask you?
We're asking Gracie first.
We're
before
asking- we're gonna
and
go
then-
around the
And then
table.
we're going to ask you.
Aw.
You know how this works. Come on.
I don't have a favorite part. I
No.
like the whole movie.
It is a fantastic movie. Sometimes it's hard. It's a fantastic movie. It's better than nice. Sometimes it's hard to take an existing source material like a novel and convert it into a movie, but I think Robert Mulligan does an amazing job of getting this story across. All the actors in it just do heartbreaking performances, from Gregory Peck to Mary Bendlin, is that her name? The girl who played Scout, and just everybody else in between. I think another interesting aspect of this movie is how this Southern gentleman who's a widower tries to instill in his children empathy and compassion and a sense of consciousness. And he seemed kind of progressive. I thought that was interesting how he told his children to refer to him by his first name instead of saying father or dad or papa.
Well,
Which wasn't a typical, didn't seem like a typical Southern.
No, he would actually be surprised if they actually called him Dad.
Well, didn't in the beginning.
He's very used to the kids calling him his actual name.
Well, he asked,
Dad.
Did
when
he ask
Scout,
him, or Scout just said that Jem just started calling him?
I thought Scout said that in the beginning that he told them to call him by his first name to kind of put them on equal footing.
No, that was never in the movie.
No.
Scout basically said that Jem just started calling him that, and so she called him that too. And he never objected or anything like that.
Right, but it's still interesting that he didn't turn that around.
It was interesting that he didn't really care, to be addressed by that title. At the end, though, Jem did call him Dad.
Yeah.
So I wonder why that was. Was it more of a he's finally truly respected his dad?
I don't know. I think he always respected his dad. And, speaking, that's a great thing that you bring up, because one of my favorite scenes in this movie is the court scene. And
why do you like the court scene?
Olivia, let Mom
I'm going
talk.
to explain why I like the court scene so much. I think because you get a sense of who Atticus is as an individual. He took a job, like the neighbor had said, Miss Maudie. He took a job that not a lot of people would have taken, because he had a sense of honor, he had a sense of duty, he had a sense of responsibility. He was a lawyer, and the judge asked him to represent Tom Robinson, who was accused of this heinous crime. And you come to find out in the trial that Tom Robinson most absolutely did not do the things to Mayella Ewell that she claims that he did to her. And I think they were trying to pretty much use him as a scapegoat in this instance. And what really happened, which you can infer just from the information that's given in that one scene, is that Mayella took a liking to Tom, tried to get him to, she tried to seduce him, and her father found out, and her father beat the crap out of her.
Yeah.
Right.
And to cover up the shame of it, basically said, you're going to say this,
right,
and this guy's going to die.
Right. And I think another extraordinary takeaway from that scene is that she was ready to throw this man under the bus in order to save face.
Yeah.
With no compunction, with no remorse, which just proved to you what worthless people these were. Worthless.
Yeah.
They were horrible.
Horrible
They were
people.
whores.
Okay. Don't say that word.
That's not a bad word. It's fine. But it doesn't really apply in this sense.
In this situation
Yeah.
at all.
But, so, and then, of course, the climax of that scene is that as Atticus leaves the courtroom, Reverend Sykes turns to Scout and says for her to stand up to show respect, because
Back in that time.
well, not just that, but here was a good, honorable man who did a good job of vindicating this person, but because the racism was so embedded in this culture, I think everybody in that courtroom knew that Bob Ewell was responsible for what happened to Mayella.
They knew he was innocent, but you could not allow that to pass.
Right. And in his closing arguments, you hear Atticus beseech these people, like, do what's right. You have all this information. You know what the right thing to do is. He never says Bob Ewell's name, never points a finger, but basically makes the case that there was no way that Tom Robinson was responsible for what happened to Mayella. So that, again, the scene where, because of segregation, the whites seat separately from the blacks.
They're in the balcony.
Are all in the balcony where it's super hot. And they're all crammed in together in this tiny space. But when Atticus leaves, as a sign of respect, they all stood up. And that's a very, very powerful scene, because he's, in a sense, an ally. And that comes across very well in the book. And I think that the filmmaker did a really outstanding job with that courtroom scene. It's dense and it's compact, but it really tells you that story of what really happened to this woman.
Olive, what did you think of the movie?
It was good.
What was your favorite part?
I don't really know, but my least favorite part was when they shot that dog.
Oh, the mad dog.
The mad dog. Well,
spoilers.
Oh, that's okay. We'll put a note. This is a book from the 1960s.
It's a 60-year-old movie. I think the spoiler alert warning on this one is off.
It's kind of irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
That's a great scene too. I mean, also little glimpses of Atticus as an individual, where the sheriff tells Jem basically like, "Oh, didn't you know your daddy was the best shot in this county?"
Yeah, that's like one of the things that develops over time that I believe led up to what we were talking about. Is Jem doesn't seem to really know his father that well. I mean, Atticus is very open and honest with his kids, but Jem, I don't know if growing up where he is, he doesn't really see his dad as, or sees Atticus, as he calls him, as, I guess, almost like a role model at this point. And over time, that sort of develops that his father actually has facets that he doesn't know about. As far as, I mean, up to that point, it just seemed like Jem just saw his dad as sort of the disciplinarian, and that he's maybe that his dad was weak in a way, like in the very beginning, the scene where he wouldn't come out of that treehouse unless Dad played football for the Methodists.
Yeah.
Or what?
And his father was like, "I'm too old for that."
Right.
And he's like, "You're too old for anything."
Right.
You know, so I think he sees his dad as sort of weak. He's not a working man. He basically works as a lawyer. He's wearing a suit. He's not like tilling fields and whatnot. And then
More rugged.
over time, he sees that his dad, there's more to his dad. There's more facets to this man, and he's a capable guy.
Yes.
I mean, he puts down the mad dog.
He faces down that crowd.
I mean, he went out there by himself, stood in front of the jail with a lamp and a book. He didn't even take a gun or anything.
Yeah.
And those guys, if those kids didn't show up, they probably would have either beat the hell out of Atticus or killed him outright to get at Tom.
Right.
And there was that, and thank God for Scout, because her words are what turned that mob
Especially
around.
Mr. Cunningham, right?
Especially Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah.
There's no shame in what was it?
Entitlement.
Entitlements aren't bad.
Yeah.
Because I mean, his father did something for him. And Atticus could have been like, you know what, screw you, you got to give me money.
Right.
He
says that.
He understood the community. He was part of the community. Atticus was part of the community.
Right. And he helped the community because he would take cases like Cunningham's and expect just, what was it, he paid him in hickory or something?
Nuts. And some sort of, something they ate earlier in the week. Right.
And these weren't rich people, because that was another thing. They got into a fight. Scout, first day of school, gets into a fight with his son.
Mm-hmm. And instead of, first thing they invite the kid over for dinner. Right. Yeah.
And the kid eats like he's never eaten before.
He's never seen food in his life.
Right.
So these are poor people, and
Very poor.
Atticus knows them, and he may be a lawyer, but he is part of that community.
Right.
And I think Jem may not have truly realized that.
Right.
And then even more so when he gains even more respect for his father when he sees his father stand up for that man in court and do his damnedest and
still
prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this guy is not guilty at all, and still
the deep-seated racism
the institutionalized racism, it doesn't matter. This guy was guilty from the get-go.
Right. Solely based on
Yule
the
probably
was
hoping that mob would have killed him before the court even began, because then when that stuff came out, he was embarrassed.
Right.
Which set off the whole chain of events in the final act of the movie. And
very powerful stuff. We're
strong.
living through some strange times right now as well. And I think that's the reason I picked this movie, was because this is something that as a country, as a society, we've been dealing with for hundreds and hundreds of years. People say that this country is built basically on slavery, and they're not really wrong about that. Unfortunately, this country has looked down on people of color and built an industry in jails and whatnot to pretty much suppress this population. And I think maybe having read the book, again, this was a book that I read in high school.
Like your teacher forced you.
That I was assigned to read, and in a way looked at as being forced to read. But this and The Picture of Dorian Gray were two of the books that I actually enjoyed so much. Portrait is picture. So To Kill a Mockingbird and The Portrait of Dorian Gray were the two books that I actually went back to my teacher and said, thank you for having me read this. I felt like both stories really resonated with me, but more this one than anything, because I think
it's true to life.
It's true to life, and
it'll hit in a way that a fictional fantasy like Dorian Gray will never hit.
Right.
Because
this stuff is happening, and it's been happening for so damn long, and it's still. I mean, it was a book written in 1960 talking about something that's taking place in 1930.
Yeah,
and it still resonates today in 2020.
Yeah. So
that's almost 100 years, and that's like
crazy.
1930 was what, like 90 or some odd years after slavery ended, and still
we're having these discussions.
We're still dealing with these things, and it just hasn't gone away.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's you'd say, oh, that's a time capsule. No, it's
happening here
relevant.
and now.
It's amazing what you could find in these older films. When they get them right, they get them right. And To Kill a Mockingbird, they really get it right.
Another movie that we should probably discuss is Inherit the Wind, and you and I have had this discussion because that as well resonates even to this day.
The courtroom speeches in Inherit the Wind
are phenomenal.
You could basically
say it now.
You could say them now, and it would mean the exact same thing. It would have the same impact. You wish people would say those things now, because it's almost like, oh my God, they predicted this situation. They predicted that lunacy would take over, which it has.
Favorite characters? Olive G. Do you have a favorite character in the movie?
Not really.
Not really?
Wow, so blunt.
You don't even want to think about it. Not Atticus, the lawyer, dad, all-around good guy.
What about Scout? Wasn't she like an interesting little girl like that? She was
Atticus's hero.
She was beating the hell out of kids, like, you know.
Yeah, left and right. She
She's
was a brawler.
She was a brawler. She wasn't going to take
was a
anything
brawler.
sitting down.
I think, it's funny, not to sidetrack here, but another powerful image or takeaway from the courtroom scene is, I feel like of all the people, all the black folks that were sitting in the balcony sort of assumed that this is where this situation was going to go. I don't think they had any doubt that this was what was going to happen. I think that they respected Atticus for fighting the good fight. But another takeaway of mine from that scene was the disillusionment on Jem's face when he realizes that there's that loss of innocence, because you think that here's my father, the lawyer, who presented an airtight case. Like you said, everyone in that courtroom knows exactly what happened, and yet this jury found this man guilty
of something he didn't commit.
Of something that he didn't commit, and are willing, because I believe the death penalty was on the table for this crime. Or am I remembering stuff from the book? Because obviously the book is obviously more fleshed out. There's more details and stuff in the book. I could swear that was.
I wouldn't be surprised if the death penalty was involved. I mean, this is like 1930s America.
South.
It's the ultimate. Oh my God, a black guy and a white woman.
Right. Remember when the lawyer for the state was like, "You felt sorry for a white woman"?
Yeah.
Like
he was like shocked. It's like, how dare you?
Yeah. That you think that you're so above a white woman.
Are you better than her?
Right. That scene was very, very tough to watch, because a lot of that ideology exists to this day, where people feel that they can judge people solely on the color of their skin.
Yeah, especially poor and ignorant, and better poor ignorant white guy than a black guy.
Right.
And that sort of sentiment
carries
through to this day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's if you broke it down, you'd see poor is poor, and you're both being treated like crap. But because you have like this weird
notion that I'm better than
the proud South. And
my family came over in the Mayflower.
My heritage and whatever.
Or whatever.
Get the hell out of here.
So I think that to me was another impactful part of that courtroom scene, where you see the disillusionment on Jem's face, just the whole like, how could this happen? And that sort of leads to a loss of innocence, because you feel like, I think most children have a certain notion of things the way they should be. I think an example,
when you're a little kid, the good guy should win.
Right? There's a very
people are good.
definitive sense of right and wrong.
People are like strange outliers, and justice will win out in the end.
In the end, and unfortunately,
and to see it just happen right before your eyes, and have your dad be such an instrumental part of witnessing the failure of the justice system.
Yeah.
And that, no, sorry, good guys don't always win. Sometimes the innocent people get just killed. And that, I mean, yeah, 30, how many years, spoiler alert, but Tom Robinson meets his end because he allegedly went nuts and ran away.
Right, and the reason
killed him.
And the reason who even knows if he ran away, right? That's the one thing.
That was a load of crap.
Although, like, you could also make the case that he ran away because he knew what was going to happen, right? His fear took over, and I doubt. Again, I'd have to read the book again. I remember loving it so much. I'm almost mad at myself that I didn't read it before we saw this movie. But I think I will try to dig up a copy.
Actually, you did read it before we watched this movie.
It didn't.
You watched it many years before we watched this movie.
Well, I watched it, but the movie and the book
Let's not get into
semantics.
Yeah, I know you like correcting everything.
The book is more detailed, basically. That obviously, Harper Lee has more license to world build and expand and lay out portions of the story better than you would in a film. But I think Mulligan does an excellent job of bringing that book to the screen and highlighting a lot of the important information. I like the use of the narrator. I guess it's probably Scout as a young adult or even an older person recounting this time in her youth where so many things happened that changed the course of their young lives. It's almost like a coming of age. When you come of age, you get to that point where you move into that next phase. You're not a child. The rose-colored glasses come off and you see more of the world for what it is and how it is. And I think that while some things remain the same, I think there can be change. And I think that people like Atticus usher in that change by being those people. When Miss Maudie, the neighbor, says to them, there are men in this world that have like these awful jobs that they're assigned, and your father is one of them. I'm sure in a perfect world, Atticus wouldn't have taken that job, but the judge came to him that night to ask him to represent Tom Robinson in court. And as a lawyer, as a professional, as someone sworn to the duty of defending a client, he took that case.
Yeah, I think that he chose Atticus because he knew that Atticus would do
the best job
possible for that guy.
Right.
And he even says that when he's speaking to Jem, he says, "If I didn't do this, I would not be able to hold my head
right, or tell you and your sibling anything, because I wouldn't be able to look at myself." Yeah. The shame of having turned my back on another human being. And I think another powerful thing is in earlier conversations, race doesn't play a part. He just addresses Tom as a man, as a gentleman. In the trial, he says the word Negro, but before that, he doesn't. Not really. It only comes up in the trial, and I think that was powerful. And I don't know. I don't remember if that's how it is in the book, but it's a powerful choice of the filmmaker in telling the story. And then the ending, where I was talking about how like Atticus is a proponent for change. People like Atticus are the people that smash the old ways and usher in new ways, and by instilling those values in their children, then their children go into the world and hopefully make it a better place. I think another lovely scene was Sheriff Tate at the end. Here's a man who's sworn to do a duty as a sheriff to uphold the law. And he basically says, Bob Ewell, still suffering from embarrassment of being shown up at this trial, tries to hurt Jem and Scout. And then you have the character of Boo Radley come and defend the children and ultimately kill Bob Ewell. And then when they're at, yes, nobody was sad to see that guy go.
No,
And yeah, it was a piece
Family
of,
probably happy too.
yeah, and
Yeah, it's a piece of crap.
piece of crap is right. Anyway, so at the end, when kind of get to the bottom of it, it was interesting because it felt like Atticus just really believed that Jem killed him. And then when the sheriff is like, do you think Jem did this? Because that's not what happened. And then it dawns on Atticus what really happened. And then the whole speech from the sheriff, like, you can't, as far as I'm concerned, Bob Ewell fell on his knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's the case, and it's closed as far as I'm concerned. And I think that scene, too, is powerful because here's someone who is living in this timeline, is living entrenched in this socially unjust culture. But he even says, you know, an innocent man died. An innocent man died. And the guy who killed him is now dead. And as far as I'm concerned, the slate is clean and we move on from here. So really, really powerful stuff. Again, I would love to, I got to read the book again. I'm sure I will find it as mesmerizing, as enthralling as I did as a junior in high school. But kudos to Harper Lee. I have no desire to read the sequel or the prequel to this book, whatever it is. I've heard so many awful things about it.
Yeah,
And it's just, yeah, it's just devastating to me because to me, To Kill a Mockingbird, and again, I haven't really read it since maybe college, because I remember there was a point where I would read these books over and over again. I haven't really read it since college. A lot of life has happened. A lot of memories have faded. But I'm sure that it's still one of the greatest American novels ever written. So kudos to Harper Lee for creating this lovely world and really holding the mirror up to society and saying, this is who we are and we can be better.
Good.
Any closing thoughts? Scale of 1 to 10, G, what would you give the movie?
8.50.
8.50. Dad?
Yeah, 8.5.
8.5. Olive G?
You could be honest.
If you didn't like it, it's
If you
okay.
didn't like it, it's alright. It's
Yeah.
not really a movie geared towards an 8-year-old.
Yes, exactly. It's not a kid's movie.
If you were a little
There's
bored,
some
it's
heavy
okay.
stuff going on.
I would give it a 6.
6.
6.
I was bored.
You're easily bored. Unless it's Minecraft. You're easily bored. I understand. I am going to give this movie a 9. I think, again, it's amazing. Robert Mulligan did such a lovely job bringing a book to the screen. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works gangbusters. I think this is one of those cases. This movie won a Best Writing Adapted Screenplay Oscar, one for Best Actor for Gregory Peck, and one for Best Art Direction, and rightly so. It probably should have won for Best Director and Best Picture. I can't remember who did, but still an important piece of literature, an important piece of American cinema, and something that I hope and recommend that parents out there watch it with your kids, have those discussions. They're very, very important. We all bleed red. We all cry. We all feel happiness. We all feel sadness. It's not right that there are people out there that feel like because of the color of their skin, they have a bullseye on their back. It's just not right, and it's not fair. And I think the rest of us really need to use our platforms and our voices to get the message across that we're all in this together. I don't know what it's like to walk in those shoes. I can't imagine as a mom having to tell my kid, what to do if they're confronted in a situation that could potentially be violent and cost them their lives. It makes me shudder. It makes me sick. I don't know how Black women do it. I really don't. It breaks my heart. Anyway, that's it for us, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon. Good night.
Night.